And staying with government's concern over China's unrestricted warfare, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has just signed a new law aimed at protecting Texans from foreign political coercion and intimidation. The bill creates new criminal offenses targeting transnational repression and unauthorized enforcement of foreign laws. The law takes effect on September 1st. Joining us now to break down the implications is Kervin Aucoin. He is a former lead intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance coordinator for the U.S. Army, as well as he's the host of the podcast This Week Explained. Always good to see you, Kervin. Thanks for joining. What's unique in your mind about the tools that this law provides Texas to protect its own citizens?
First of all, absolutely a pleasure to be here talking to you again. I would say what this does now, because the FBI has been doing this since, I think, January of last year. So that's on a federal level. This kind of came about with the police stations that were being built up by China in various large cities. So that was on the federal level, but they were obviously not doing enough to scope down to the actual cities and communities that are affected by this. So what this does is opens it up to local law enforcement to enforce these laws and enforce our First Amendment rights as U.S. citizens, and those who come here and become U.S. citizens to continue to practice those First Amendment rights, whether you're talking about China or whether you're talking about countries like France and the U.K. You should be able to, in the United States, talk about any administration around the world without them having that long arm that can actually arrest you or deport you back to their country and face the laws that they have.
Now, Kervin, what specific actions does this law target, and which foreign actors or entities does it address?
Yeah, so this is coming in to stop what is called, the repression of certain voices within the United States, and these are people who who the CCP considers dissidents, or those that have left and gotten diplomatic immunity, maybe in the United States. And so while they speak out in the United States, what China has been able to do is send CCP officials into the United States, either repress their voice or actually pull them out of the country and bring them back to Beijing in order to face a trial that some would say is a completely unfair trial. So that's what we're looking at here, the repression of their voices because they are talking against the CCP, against Xi Jinping, and against China as a whole.
Now, that seems extraordinary for China or any other country to be able to send their operatives into our country and forcibly remove somebody from the protections of the U.S., somehow get them onto a plane and bring them to face, court proceedings in another country. So I guess my question is, how pervasive is this problem, really?
I don't know if we use the word how pervasive it is, but it does go under the radar, but it is happening. Like I mentioned with the police stations, we had one in Times Square in New York City, and these police stations were built up and we found out without the knowledge of the U.S. government or without the knowledge of the local community that these police stations were actually Chinese officials who are Chinese security agents into the U.S. who were then going and finding dissidents, finding the families of dissidents, grabbing them, arresting them, and then putting them on a plane and sending them over to China. So how pervasive is it? We're not talking about, tens of thousands of people, but I would say even a dozen people, that is incredibly scary for any family. And just what we're doing right here, what are the limitations of me talking to you and talking against the Chinese Communist Party? These are the answers that we need from this administration and the U.S. government. I am very glad to see that Texas is actually taking the initiative in here. They are leading the way on this because, I've seen reports that in San Francisco, this is not happening because the local level officials have no authority to do this, and the FBI is not going in and trying to do this. And there are a lot of people very worried that they are going to be the next in this campaign.
Yeah, the concept of a foreign police station operating covertly in some place as iconic as Times Square really does illustrate the problem. Do you see other states following suit?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think so. And look, this is, I grew up in Louisiana. I went to Texas a lot, and I've always seen that Texas usually leads the way on these kind of things. I can see, especially a state, let's look at Florida. They are very heavily in approval in the Trump administration, what the Trump administration's doing. This is sort of something that the Trump administration has been warning people about, the pervasiveness of Chinese officials within the United States from a national security perspective. So I could see Florida moving next. And if Florida does that, you're talking about the entire South. We're going to go Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. That entire Sun Belt could then move along. But what we're going to see now is, how is this implemented come September? We'll see what Texas does. Is it successful? If it is, I do believe more states are going to do this, especially within the new year.
Now, you had alluded to a gap between the federal police efforts and what needs to happen at the local level. As we finish up, Kervin, can you share your thoughts on Marco Rubio stating that there will be a revocation of Chinese student visas in both suspected ties to the CCP or in critical areas of study?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we've got a problem here. We've seen it in Stanford University in California. We're seeing it in places like MIT, Harvard. Look, I am all for students from all over the world wanting to come to the greatest nation that maybe has ever existed in the world in history, and want to learn from our professors. But the problem we have here is there are a select few people who are being sent by the Chinese Communist Party to come to the United States, to get educated in the United States, build a network of key leaders within those states, and take that back to the CCP for, a cyber program, for PSYOPs, for various other things that the CCP wants. A war kicks off, and we all have been talking about it, a move for Taiwan. If that kicks off, China's got a lot of weapons, a lot of data to use to basically get key leaders not interested in preventing China from taking Taiwan. I'm reading on this every day. This is one of the things that keeps me up at night. I would say this should be focus number one.
Appreciate your insights this morning, sounding the alarm bell, rightfully so. Host of the podcast, This Week Explained, Kervin Aucoin. Thank you so much.
It's always a pleasure to be here. Stay safe out there.